Okay, I'm here with Martin Renvoize. We're going to be talking about his role over the past 12 months or so as release manager in the Koha community. So Martin, perhaps if you'd tell us all a little bit, first of all, about what the job of release manager involves.
Okay, so the release manager, it's the head role of the community. You are in effect the guide and shepherd for the release team. So the release team is the group of people that are responsible for making the next set of releases for the community project. So as that gatekeeper or that guide and shepherd, you're responsible for helping show the direction of where code should be going. You're the final gatekeeper for any code that gets pushed into the system. So code goes through a sign-off and a testing quality assurance process, but then you're that final set of eyes before it gets pushed into the master branch or development process. And then the final piece of work for you is to actually make the release. Come every 6 months, we do a feature release.
Okay, so what would be the main milestones of your 12 months then?
Okay, so I spent 12 months, which is 2 release stints. So within those stints, you've got a feature release, which is the next milestone release with a set of new features in it. You've also got 6 maintenance releases within a 6-month period, where you're partly responsible for helping the release maintainers make sure that they get their releases that include security and bug fixes once a month consistently.
Okay, and are the feature releases at a particular time of year?
Yes, so the release names hint at when a release is made. So for a feature release, you've got the 0.6 and the 0.11. So 0.6 being June, and then 0.11 being a November release.
Okay, great, thank you. And during your 12 months, would you say you did anything particular or anything different that maybe made your mark on the role?
So I used the opportunity to try and shake up the process a little bit. I split the 6-month period, or each of the 6-month periods, into 3 blocks of 2 months, so that we had more of an experimental window in the middle to try and encourage and flourish new development that in the past might have got caught up in the QA process. So we had a 2-month window where we would concentrate on bug fixes and making sure the maintenance releases were going really well and the previous feature release was nicely polished. And then we'd have a 2-month window with where I encouraged the QA team and the testers and the code developers to be a little bit more ambitious, to let code through a little bit earlier than it may have been let through in previous cycles, with the promise and the adherence that developers would be quick acting to fix bugs that we then found during that 2-month period. And then we had a 2-month period prior to the actual release of the new feature set, where we polished and fixed bugs and made sure that the release was as stable as we could make it.
Okay,
and
great.
I thought that worked really well.
Good. And what about any changes to processes and practices during your time? Did you work on anything there in particular?
We worked quite hard to generally improve the development workflows. So I worked quite closely with the quality assurance team to kind of improve their knowledge of various areas of the code base. We tried to document more of the workflows. There's a lot of workflows that have been happening behind the scenes but weren't well documented. So when it came to passing over from one team to the next team 6 months later, there was a lot of knowledge either lost or hopefully the same people stuck around. So I tried to get that documented and best practices sort of written down more and available for the next teams to look at. We also had a bit of a focus on improving the coverage of our unit tests. We worked quite hard with our automated testing systems to add additional cases that weren't tested before. So on a wider range of versions of MySQL, on a wider range of servers, which has worked really well and is ongoing. I think those kind of process-wise, those were the real improvements.
Great. I mean, you're saying we, obviously it is very much a team effort, the whole running of the community. So what are the other roles in the community, just so we're clear on what other jobs there are to do?
So the release manager is the figurehead at the top, and then directly beneath that figurehead you have the quality assurance team, who's responsible for doing a final set of testing of any code that's been submitted, and a review of the technicalities of how that code works. They're looking for anything that's not been caught in an initial test run. We've got people that can do sign off, so that's everybody. So anybody here can help with sign off. That's sort of the first run of testing. So if you've paid for an enhancement or found a bug, you just take a look on Bugzilla and have a tester run through the test plan. So you're looking for, does it function as expected, as described? Are there areas where it might affect something else that the developer may not have spotted? So that's the sign off, that's the wide group. Then within that, we've got, in parallel, you've got the release maintainers. So there's 3 release maintainers, one for each of the current supported branches. So we have a stable branch, an old stable branch, and a legacy or old stable branch. So there's a maintainer for each of those, and it's their job to pick and choose bugs that have been fixed in the development branch, and choose whether they are an enhancement or a bug fix or a security fix, and then waterfall them or cascade them down into their branches, and then do a release each month. And then there's a whole group of people who also help out with things like concentrating on the translation each month, concentrating on documentation. So we've got a documentation team, and general admin.
And I'm right in saying that all of these roles are voluntary in the community, so they're all sort of roles that people can come forward and sort of offer to take on.
Correct. We will always try and encourage new blood into the teams, and so to become a member of the team, you can submit your name forward or put your name forward once every 6 months prior to a team change. We tend to try and keep the team stable for 6 months, so you'd have to wait for a team change, and then we have an annual or a community meeting where you'll be voted in and kind of encouraged and helped on for the next sort of the first month of that to help you settle in.
Excellent. So it's a welcoming team.
Yes, very welcoming.
Great. Just coming back to you and your role, is there anything in your time that you feel you wanted to get done but didn't get done?
I think there's always targets that are not necessarily achieved in a cycle. So I'd really hoped to introduce a chronological change log. So we have a set of release notes each release, but what we don't have is a clear chronological, so time ordered log of features and additions over time. And unfortunately, that was a bridge too far. I didn't manage to complete that, although there's work ongoing to try and introduce such a thing in coming releases. I also had hoped, perhaps naively, that I could introduce a much clearer roadmap for my 12 months. So a roadmap to say, we'll aim to get feature X in and concentrate on feature X as a whole community, and then feature Y, and in that order. But I found that was very challenging to do, simply because the community is so large, so international, with so many stakeholders pulling in different directions. It was quite difficult to shepherd enough of a group to be able to put a clear roadmap on paper. We had focal areas, but when they might pop up during the release was quite challenging to time.
Right. And I mean, you did this job alongside your full-time job at PTFS Europe. So, you know, how do you fit it in? What are the tricks about fitting in voluntary community work alongside your normal day job?
That's probably one of the most difficult parts of the job. So being a big international community, there's people working pretty much 24 hours a day from various different countries. So the way I tried to fit it in, I worked regularly in the mornings. I would do an early stint. We have a 9:30 meeting as a company, and I would try and get the majority of my keeping up with coding done Monday to Thursday, early mornings, and then I would tend to use the whole of Friday. I'd save a list of more difficult bugs that I needed to look at, more difficult reviews, and I found that doing that couple of hours each morning meant that I could keep up with the community role, and then I'd have most of the rest of the day to continue on PTFS work, keep up with the support tickets, and keep up with our own development efforts.
Brilliant. And I mean, are there benefits to PTFS Europe and to our customers for you taking on that release manager role?
I think so. I think it really helps show the commitment to the community that we've got as a company. It gives us a huge amount of respect from the various other groups that are involved, and it, from a selfish perspective, it really helps us move some of our own targets forward. It helps, as the sort of guide and shepherd, it helps us to be able to say, let's focus on areas of code that would really help benefit some of our internal targets and our customers' goals. In this particular set of releases, we had a real focus on the accounts code and introducing cash management and point of sale features, which hadn't really had a focus before. So it was really nice to be able to drive some of those things forward and improve for our customer base.
Great, good. And what would you like to see for the role itself in the future? Is there anything you would suggest could be improved about the role or done in the role going forward?
I think I'd like to see a lot of the improvements that I tried to put in place carried forwards. So I'm aware that this cycle they've taken on the mantle of keeping the experimental window going, which is really nice to see. I think there's a real focus on trying to automate more of the processes so that developers can concentrate more on development than continue to having to be fixing bugs and the kind of day-to-day admin of the role. And I think there's some improvements happening in terms of the overall handover process. So from one team to the next, I want to make it lighter weight and easier for new people to step into the more ambitious or more scary roles in the team.
Great. And what about you personally? Are you're a community board. You like being part of the Koha community. So how are you getting yourself involved now that you're no longer the release manager?
I do indeed. I thoroughly enjoy being part of the community. So I've got a continued role as in the quality assurance team, and as part of that, I help shoulder the burden of a lot of the code checks. I'm also continuing to help with the next release manager's role by offering advice and helping with that handover process, and generally being quite a respected member of the community now. I'm a bit of a face of the community, so I tend to be there when people are asking questions or need help, and I take a bit of a personal what's the word? I like to encourage new developers into it. That's an area I'm really focused on at the moment, is trying to encourage the next generation through.
Fantastic. And given the chance, would you do it again?
I would jump at the opportunity. I would love to do it again. It's nice to be back into normality a bit at the moment, but I would happily have another go, or happily support the current and the next generation through.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Martin, for your time and for telling us all about this, the time that you spent as release manager. If people wanted to find out more about the roles in the community, I guess they'd head over to the Koha website. Is that right?
Correct. So the website's got some of the basic details on release processes and cycles, and then there's a number of articles on the community wiki, which is linked from the website, and that details each of the roles, how to become involved, etc.
Great. Okay, well, thanks very much, Martin, and I hope everyone watching this has enjoyed this bit of an insight and a tour of what's involved in the release manager role.
Well, thank you.